Thank you for doing this. I want to start first with how your health is, physically, emotionally.
I feel better right now than I felt in years. A lot of that is, the steps that I've taken since the incident occurred. But physically and emotionally, I feel great right now.
What are some of those steps?
So shortly after the event, I got engaged in outpatient treatment with Kraus. I also joined a self-help group that I regularly attend. Both of those things have been great for me. The positive impact that's had on my health and my relationships has been extraordinary.
Outpatient with Kraus for drug use?
Nope, it's for alcohol use.
For alcohol, okay. How's your family holding up? Because through this, you're a dad and a husband. So how are they doing?
I think well, to the extent that I can. Obviously, with my kids, I try and shield them from this as much as I can. We hear and see some of the comments, and that's not fun for sure. We're human beings, but I think we're holding up well.
The night in question starts with a day of drinking. Would you take us back through those hours?
So I was playing in a golf tournament that I play in annually with my brother, and I consumed too much alcohol that day. I accept responsibility for the events that occurred. I'm a good person. I know good people make mistakes, but I'm not a perfect person. The bottom line is I accept responsibility for the events that occurred. It doesn't define me. It doesn't change who I am as a person, and it certainly doesn't change the work that I've done in my life.
I want to go through that a little specifically. So you were at the golf tournament. You drank too much. You had admitted to that in real time.
Yep.
And then from your recollection or from what you've heard since, how did it transition from a golf tournament to a night at your lake house?
Well, we went home afterwards, from what I've heard. It's not a point of pride for me. I consumed alcohol to the point where I don't recall the afternoon or the evening. I woke up in the hospital. So what I know is what I've been told. But again, I accept responsibility for the position that I put myself in, that misuse of alcohol. But for that, I would have not been in that situation.
We've heard the pocket dial, the butt dial recording that went to a village court. We've read what police said happened that night. You don't remember any of it.
I don't remember any of it. I think that there are still questions to be answered as far as what occurred. I think there's a time and a place to go through all of that. The bottom line is I accept what I did to get myself into that situation, and that doesn't define me as who I am as a person.
You had, in the statement on your website, the next few days, you denied ingesting illegal drugs. Why that discrepancy? Why did you think you had it?
Well, so no recollection of the evening, and all I have to go on is the information that I have. I understand that the sheriff's office had said they had an indication as to what they believe occurred, and it was directly contradicted by my medical records. The toxicology report that I got from the hospital showed no illegal substances in my system. I had acute kidney failure. I had extreme dehydration. These are the things that I was told from the hospital and from my doctor. And that's the information I had to go on at the time. 6 weeks later, the sheriff came out with a second toxicology report, and their narrative as to what occurred had changed. And at that point, I issued a statement where I accepted responsibility for what occurred.
Do you believe the latest toxicology reports?
Well, I haven't seen it. I've requested it. I submitted a FOIL request, and that hasn't been provided to me yet. But the bottom line is that regardless, is that I accept responsibility for my actions that put me in that position.
Does your responsibility include ingesting something illegal?
Well, I don't know what occurred. I don't know that anyone knows definitively what occurred, but I accept that I put myself in that position.
Based on the police investigation, someone there had an intention to do cocaine. Why were drugs in your lake house? Why was someone who wanted to do drugs in your lake house?
Yeah, I can't answer that question. Again, I'd gotten myself by consuming alcohol to the point where obviously I wasn't aware of my surroundings, and I accept responsibility. That it made it clear to me that my relationship with alcohol put me in that position, and that was something that I needed to reevaluate. And that's why I've taken the steps that I have to address that, and I'm in a good place now.
Have you ever done illegal drugs before?
This is not something that's part of my life. This is something that's entirely out of character for me. I think part of why it was, initially the records that I had from the hospital, it's hard for me to believe that I would put myself in this position.
You worded that artfully. Have you ever taken illegal drugs in your life?
I mean, in college, 25 years ago, there are things that I experimented with. But again, this is not something that's part of my life.
Have you talked to the people you were with that night? Has anyone opened up to you about what happened? People who do remember what happened, how the drugs got into your lake house?
I don't know. I don't have any information as it relates to that. Part of this was me reevaluating the choices that I had made that put me in this position. And I haven't had conversations with individuals that probably could answer those questions.
Have you ended relationships because of what happened?
I mean, there's certain people that I haven't talked to since then.
What would you say to people skeptical? People who hear you say this, believe you, but say there's got to be more to it.
I can't answer that. I know who I am as a person. I know that what's alleged in the incident is something that's completely out of character for me. I know that I'm a good person. I know that good people make mistakes. I accept that I got myself in this position, but I can't speak for other people.
The incident has technically disqualified you from being an assistant district attorney. You no longer have that job. You've resigned as the president of the Bar Association. Why doesn't this disqualify you from being elected judge?
Well, judges bring with them their life experiences to the bench. This is now one of my life experiences and will be for the rest of my life. I know that I'm the best person for this job. I got to the point where I was unopposed, that I had been endorsed by the Republican and Conservative Party, and the Democratic Party didn't even, choose to run anyone against me because of my experience and because of my reputation in the legal community. This one event doesn't erase that. Those qualities still exist. Again, the event doesn't define me. I know that I'm the best person for this job.
There's a state level commission on judicial conduct. There's a chance that group investigates what happened if you're elected. You may not be seated right away. Why should voters, taxpayers tolerate that interruption to the judicial system locally? Why should you get paid if that kind of investigation happens?
Well, I don't know that anyone knows definitively that will happen, and what they do is not a decision that's for me to make. I haven't been charged with a crime. Right? My law license is in good standing. I'm the right person for the job, and I know that I'll do a good job for Madison County.
You were unopposed. You are now opposed. There is a writing candidate being put forth by both the Conservative and Republican parties, the groups that had endorsed you and took away their endorsement. The Democratic Party is also helping support this writing candidate. You're now engaged in a political campaign. What's that process like for you? What's the next month look like campaigning, trying to sell yourself to people as a good choice?
I mean, it's no different than what I did going through the endorsement process. In judicial races, you're supposed to talk about your qualifications and not talk about your opponent. So I talk about why I'm qualified and my experience and why I'm the best person for the job. As was the case in the endorsement process, when I talk to voters, they recognize that the experience that I have and what I've gone through over the course of my career makes me right for this position.
Do you think politics, I'm wondering if you'd review what's your assessment on how this has been handled from county government, law enforcement? What's your assessment on the response to what happened?
Well, I think there's a time and a place for a full accounting of everything that has happened. But what I would say is I recognize that I put myself in this position. It doesn't change who I am as a person.
As a lawyer, as a former prosecutor, as a potential judge, how does this experience give you insight into the overall problem in society? Alcohol use, drug use, fentanyl being available in Madison County, so available ended up in your lake house without you knowing it. What do you make of that problem in society?
Well, it's certainly not one that I was unaware of. I mean, I was aware of it. I served as a deputy coroner, so I would get calls related to overdoses. I've always been a compassionate person, and I've always been a fair person, even as a prosecutor. I recognize that good people make mistakes, and that when good people make mistakes, they put their best foot forward, that they can be assisted through the legal system to rehabilitate themselves and to be a better member of society. Not every case that comes needs to be, a punitive, response to what has taken place. I would say that, this has kind of reinforced what I felt before, right? That people need to be treated fairly, people need to be treated with compassion. and that people can be lifted up in times of struggle and right the ship.
If you're elected, if you're seated, and a drug case comes before you, do you feel you can fairly judge the person and the people's argument when you're dealing with a case maybe similar to yours?
Absolutely. I think you would be hard-pressed to find anyone that's dealt with me throughout my career as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, in any capacity where I've been anything but fair. It's one of the number one requirements for a judge is to be fair. You treat each case based on the merits and the circumstances in that particular case. That's the way I've been my entire life, and I'd be no different as judge.
How's rehab going for alcohol?
It's going great. Like I said, the positive impact it's had on my health has been extraordinary. In my relationships, it's been going great. I think that to some extent this has been a blessing because it has, refocused my priorities, and I feel great.
How long do you think you've had a problem?
I don't know, I don't know how to answer that question, right? I think a lot of people in that situation would say to you that they didn't recognize that they had an issue until there was an event that brought that about, right? It was obviously crystal clear to me, based on the situation that I got myself into that, but for my misuse of alcohol, I would not have been in that situation. And it was something that I addressed and continue to address.
Do you feel lucky to be alive?
I'm fortunate and grateful. That's what I would say to that. I do feel fortunate and grateful.
At some point, do you hope you learn more details about that night? Is it something you'd like to forget totally? Or do you hope the people around that night explain to you, they helped you get to this situation? Someone brought drugs into your home that night. Do you hope to hold someone accountable for that?
I think there comes a time and a place where there will be a full accounting, and I think that is important, not just for what occurred that night, but what occurred after. There will be a time and a place for that.
What have you told your daughters?
It was one of the toughest conversations I've ever had, talking to them about, good people make mistakes and you need to be responsible for your actions, and they recognize that. They love me, obviously. But the bottom line is that, good people make mistakes and you need to accept responsibility for what you've done.
Your wife's in the room with us. What have conversations been like with her? How has she been able to hold up through this?
Amazing. Without her support, I'm not sure how easy it would have been for me. It's not easy for anyone to go through this. One of the toughest things is the impact it's had on my family because they've never done anything in their lives to deserve any of this. I can handle what people say about me, but she has been a rock. My family in general has been supportive.
What's the conversation like in the community? I imagine you're somewhat recognizable going about your everyday life in Casanova and other parts of Madison County. Do you meet criticism? Do you find people who won't vote for you? On the other hand, do you meet people who still support you?
I've been uplifted by the support that I've received, compassion and forgiveness. I think, our community and the voters that I've talked to believe in second chances. They understand that people aren't perfect and that good people make mistakes, and they've generally been forgiving of that.
If you're elected, what promises do you make the people of Madison County?
I promise to be fair and to do the best job that I can. I was born and raised in this county. I've lived here my entire life, and I love Madison County. I know how good I would be at the job. And I know I would do the best that I can for Madison County.
After what happened, do you think you're a risky choice?
I do not, because I know who I am as a person. Like I said, this entire situation is something that is not part of my life, entirely out of character for me. And I think if you speak to anyone who dealt with me as an assistant DA or just knows me as a person, they would say I'm a good person.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't believe so.
Okay.